Okay, Nick Dutch here, back on the camera yet again. Continuing with my little series, exploring the 13 principles of Wiccan belief. Just to quickly recap, this is the 6th video that I'm doing in this series so far. I've covered the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th principle of Wicca, and it's rather scary that I'm finding that I'm in pretty strong agreement with these 4 principles. Already, there's 13 of them. I'm nearly a quarter of the way through, roughly speaking, and already I am in agreement with the first 4 principles of Wicca. Now let's have a look at the 5th one and see how we're going. I'm finding this journey very interesting when we have a look with sufficient depth at these various principles. If they're read in a very superficial manner, one can develop, I would say, misinterpretations, or one can jump to conclusions a little too readily as to what the words mean. Like with the 4th principle, it used the words creative power. It does not use the words God and Goddess, which I think is fascinating. But anyway, let's go on to the 5th principle and see what happens here. It says, we recognize both outer worlds and inner or psychological worlds, sometimes known as the spiritual worlds or the collective unconscious, the inner planes, etc. We see the interaction of these 2 dimensions, the basis for paranormal phenomena and magical exercises. We neglect neither dimension for the other, seeing both as necessary for our fulfillment. Okay. From the top, we recognize both outer worlds and inner. It doesn't say much about what the outer world is, but I think we can infer from that means, here we go, physical things, the physical world, thus the outer world. The physical world is real. Okay, that's fine, that's accepted, fine. And then it says the inner or psychological world, sometimes known as the spiritual world. So spiritual things in the spiritual world are things in the psychological world or things in the mind, which is in its own right fascinating. It also uses other definitions, including collective unconsciousness, inner planes, but leaves the end it says etc. So that would cover a wide variety of interpretations of what goes on inside the mind. So that can mean an awful lot, essentially. And then it says, we see the interaction of these 2 dimensions, this outer and inner psychological reality or worlds, the basis for paranormal phenomena and magical exercises. Now, when you see the word paranormal phenomena, you might think, oh my God, he's talking about ghosts and all the rest of it. But not necessarily. It hasn't actually explained here what is meant by paranormal phenomena. It's just said paranormal phenomena, which could just mean ESP. Now, if anything happens in the world anyway, it has to be in accordance with the laws of nature because it's happening in the natural world, full stop. This is what I've always been saying, But yet we got this phrase paranormal. So it's got the word normal in it, and it's got the word para meaning, slightly outside of or alongside or still a part of, but also not quite with the normal world. Now, ESP just means extrasensory perception, which refers to perceiving things which appear to be not necessarily by the normal means. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is as accepted by the people who buy certain types of New Age book. It doesn't say that. So if you are a person who is very sensitive and your mind reacts psychologically to something that you are not consciously aware of and you react to it, or something in your mind gets triggered by it, then that would still be regarded as paranormal. Not impossible, but paranormal phenomena. So that is something that I would actually have some agreement with as well. But then it says, and magical exercises, but it doesn't quite state what magical exercises are within the principles. Well, so far within the principles up to this point. So we would have to extrapolate from that and look at the culture of aspects of the New Age movement, in which there are exercises of visualization, which covers the inner plane, subcollective, unconscious, spiritual world aspect as mentioned above, but is not making a statement that ghosts are real and all the rest of that. It isn't doing that. So I think that's quite, that is acceptable, very acceptable definition. It then says, we neglect neither dimension for the other, seeing both as necessary for our fulfillment. So that seems to be talking about trying to understand. It's not neglecting what's going on inside your mind. It's not neglecting what's happening in the physical world. So you're still looking after yourself, still feeding yourself, clothing yourself, working for a living, doing all the other normal stuff that humans do. And also paying attention to what's going on up here, so that you can, I don't know, deal with any issues you've got, so that you can then have this magical thing called fulfillment, which is again talking about personal growth and development, which is also fascinating. But it's not. But this is interesting, okay, because this is within the principles of Wiccan belief. But it's not necessarily saying that you have to be a Wiccan to do these things, or you have to consider yourself to be a witch to do these things. But these are things which are accepted by people who call themselves Wiccan. Okay, it's a bit like saying that a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not necessarily a square, maybe. Alright, it is interesting stuff. So that's the fifth principle of Wicca. Sorry, principle of Wiccan belief. And I have agreement with that as well. Alright, so, you know, I'm making a lot of progress of understanding here of what these principles could be about if we don't just look at the words and accept them, just boom, the way they are. You know, we've got to think more about the words and what the words mean and what they're talking about. And so far, there hasn't really been anything too abnormal or peculiar or irrelevant to the life of a normal person. And, you know, it's making sense. I'll turn the camera off and we'll do the next video. See you in a minute.